Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Our Friends. Coffee with Friends may discuss trauma of all sorts, to include all types of abuse. Viewers and listeners may find it unsettling and triggering, and if it causes you distress, please cease listening until you're able to listen again. You may also seek support from your trusted folks and qualified mental health professionals as needed. And as a reminder, the guests on our live streams reflect a diverse set of values, morals, and ethics that may not reflect the morals, values, and ethics of the Misfit Amish. And with that being said, please welcome Heather. Hi.
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on here. But, I know you a little bit, but can you tell our listeners, like, who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those that don't know me, I'm a former foster care child, religious sexual abuse survivor, religious cult survivor, um, suicide survivor. I am an intuitive art, intuitive trauma artist. Sorry, um, and I'm a pre-K teacher.
Oh, that sounds like quite the journey.
Yes.
So, when you say you're a foster care survivor and a religious cult survivor, do you mind telling us what kind of religious cult or?
Yeah. So Um, I was brought into my aunt's abusive cult from the foster care system. I spent a total of probably 8 years in the foster care system. Biological aunt adopted me, and she brought me into a Pentecostal cult. That's the easiest way I could describe it. Others may think of it as non-denominational or charismatic, but I'm going to stick with Pentecostal, um, as that's what it's easiest for me to remember. And I really, from the ages of 8 to 12, I really don't remember a lot of abuse happening. It kind of seemed fine to me, other than the fact that I was bored and I didn't want to go. Um, but when I turned 12, that's when I noticed that there was things were getting worse. I noticed my aunt was pulling away more. She was constantly spending time at this specific organization. Services got longer, so services would literally start at 10 o'clock in the morning. It would not end until 5 o'clock at night. That's a whole work day if you haven't figured that out. Literally a whole work day. Um, and specifically the sermon would go on for like 5 or 6 hours. And by the end of it, my aunt was in the office with the lead pastor or the lead cult leader for like another 2 hours. So we wouldn't get home until 6, then turn around, come back for a prayer service. And that would go for 5 or 6 hours. Um, and from there, it was just a bereavement, a barrage of control, manipulation, isolation, a lot of deliverance, a lot of using olive oil as a form and tactic of delivering people in the name of God, or abusing people in the name of God. Um, I myself, I was being sexually abused by one of the leaders for 7 years in my aunt's home. She allowed it. She knew it was going on. She actually took a confession from this individual in the middle of a Wednesday night service, of a confession of him owning and admitting that he had sexually abused his own daughters. And then that night he was at my aunt's house essaying me. Um, so that went on for 7 years. I wasn't allowed to say anything. I wasn't allowed to talk to the outside world about this. I was not even allowed to talk to my biological father. So anytime I went back home to Maine, I was not allowed to say anything. I couldn't even talk to my foster family at the time, which I was still in contact with. I wasn't allowed to say anything. Anytime I attempted, I was given the look, or the nudge, or I was deterred away from speaking or punished. So that being said, I didn't break my silence until 2017. Um, when my birth dad died, is when I broke my silence, confronted my aunt, confronted the other abuser, and I've been calling them out, holding them accountable since then. Um, I attempted to escape this specific cult in Windsor, Connecticut, in 2006, where I attempted to unalive myself in my aunt's kitchen. Um, and I don't really want to get into the nitty gritty of all that, but let's just say um, I willingly went to a local hospital in Hartford, Connecticut, to get out. And that night, I was under 48-hour watch. I was cleared after 48 hours, and it was time for me to come home. And my aunt literally said to me, "You're not welcome back. You need to repent for fornication and adultery." Keep in mind, I was a special needs child, so I didn't know what that meant. I had no clue. I didn't know what fornication meant. I didn't know what adultery meant. Um, and of course, the social worker went to bat for me, and she still refused to take me home. So her and the lead pastor of this organization picked me up and dropped me off at a homeless shelter at like 10 o'clock at night. 2 days later, Ray McMahon showed up in his 15 passenger van and dumped all of my stuff sitting in the parking lot of the homeless shelter. And basically, I was told, "You want to come back, you have to repent in front of the whole church. You have to repent to God and to your aunt for your disobedience, your fornication, adultery, everything you can think of." And there are consequences. There are severe consequences for trying to leave, leaving, and escaping. There's consequences. Some of those consequences are being SA'd again, sexually abused again. Some of those consequences are having to deal with the whole church in front of the whole church, and having to do like a restatement of faith, or just like a repentant service, whatever it is. There's consequences, just like there's consequences to me speaking out. um I don't take it lightly. I take this very serious. These three individuals have not taken accountability legally. My aunt has taken accountability with me, but that was a battle just to get her to say, like, yeah, this happened. Um, and the other two individuals have not taken any accountability whatsoever. There are six other victims involved. Um, and unfortunately, they are not able to speak out against their father because of the repercussions. And so here I am, um, calling it out, holding people accountable, and letting everybody know this is what goes on behind the closed doors.
So you mentioned that when you tried to um, talk about it while you were a teen, your aunt was allowing this to continue. Were there any efforts made to get you to safety in any form, shape, or way?
Absolutely not. Nope. I attempted several times. I attempted actually three times. I attempted to run away from home. Um, and obviously I didn't succeed in that. But I attempted. There was another time where I punched my hand right through the glass door. I was attempting to tell what was going on, and nothing was happening. I truly believe that there were individuals who did not know what was going on. And I believe that there are individuals that did know what was going on. Um, and I, for one, wholeheartedly believe that Ray McMahon knew what was going on. He was there the night Cynthia took the confession. Um, she's my aunt. So he was there for all of that. And definitely he definitely knew, and he did absolutely nothing to protect me. He did nothing to stop my aunt from abusing me. In fact, he just encouraged the abuse by him abusing me himself physically and mentally and emotionally. There was absolutely no protection. I had no protection. I was not safe. Um, it was like a beratement every day of like, who are you talking to, or where were you, or you have no business telling anybody what's going on. And just the body language. um Body language is another form of communication to the victim of, you say something, we're going to have a problem. So there was always body language being represented anytime I wanted to speak on what was happening or even try to tell what was happening.
So, do you think it was you even though like what I'm hearing is that even though like DHS was involved, there was still no protection actually given to you as a child?
Absolutely not, because in this by this case, by this point in time frame, DCF was out of my life. Like, I was adopted. It was all done and over and said and done. So at this point, yeah, I had no protection.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you mentioned there's repercussions for speaking out. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I've learned over the last 5 years that there are repercussions. And in the beginning, I kind of was clueless as to those repercussions because I wasn't aware. Um, and it actually wasn't until I started watching Escaping Polygamy, until I started watching those episodes, then I was like, oh, okay, this is real. This is that's them getting in trouble for doing that. There's consequences. And so I started kind of putting myself in check, because I was like, okay, I don't really want myself harmed, but I want this out in the open so people are aware, like, this is still going on. This is what's going on behind the closed doors of this organization, and many, many other similar ones like it. So so some of the repercussions are, and I'll start with like the smaller ones. So some of them would be online harassment. Um, some of them, for me anyway, I've gotten online harassment. I've gotten death threats. I actually had Al Aldridge send me death threats while he sent somebody to my house. Um, I've gotten a lot of fake accounts that are being used by him, or by people that he knows, to stalk me, harass me, take my content down. Bigger consequences. I lost my voice for like a month, trying to tell my story in a book. Um, that's just another repercussion. Another repercussion, after doing another podcast interview 3 weeks ago. Fast forward, I literally just injured my knee. So there's those little consequences, or the repercussions, I should say, and then there are more severe consequences and repercussions of They could physically come after me. They get rid of you. They get rid of you by taking your life, or they discommunicate you. Which, in that aspect, I've been discommunicated. So there's really not much. Like, the dirty deed has been done. The sexual abuse has been done. So there's nothing at this point that they can't do to me that they've already done. But there are consequences, and I do have to be careful. So I don't give out my locations. I don't give
Yeah.
out info because of that. I keep myself protected at all cost.
Ah, so you mentioned, did you call it disaffiliation? What
Just
dis
communicate. Just
discommunication? Okay, what does discommunication entail?
So yeah, it just means that you are cut off. Really, is that's the best, easiest way I could really come up with the word is you are done. Like, don't contact us. You are not welcome back on property. If you are on property, you'll be escorted, or the police will be called, or we will be dealing with you. No more.
So, if like members of the group, like members of this group specifically, if they saw you at the grocery store, would they engage in a conversation that isn't threatening harm towards you, or would they be at events with you? Like, that sounds like shunning, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Because when you're socially isolated from your group of origin,
Yep.
I don't care what name you call it, it's kind of shunning, isn't it?
Yep. 100%. Yeah. You can call it what you want, but it's 100% disowning, shunning. Yep.
Discommunication, whatever word you want to use to describe it.
It doesn't matter how beautiful you make that word, you're done.
So then, like, you are disconnected from your community, your church community
Hmm.
that you had belonged to,
Hmm.
and you're socially isolated there. So then where did you go? Like, where do you seek, or where do you find, like, a sense of community?
Yeah. And for somebody who has been through trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, um, I kept trying to find it in the church. I moved back to Maine and, got the helps with psychiatric, all of that stuff. And I was like, okay, like, I was still trying to give the whole God thing a second, third, fourth, fifth chance. Like, I was still like, okay, like, that doesn't have, just because that was my experience, and it's just this doesn't have to be my whole life. So I tried to find it in churches. I tried to find it in the Baptist community, which for me, I partly grew up Baptist with the last foster home that I was in. And that was very comforting for me. So I tried to find something similar. And it was working until I was getting bored. And I was like, I kind of want something different. I want something more. And I dabbled in the non denominational churches, thinking that I could find belonging, family there, only to get more hurt, more harmed, more pain. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. And I was done. Like, I kept finding myself in ministries and churches that are narcissistic and abusive. And I'm now just learning, like, oh, I see what I'm doing. Like, I'm creating that cycle again. Like, I'm going through the whole cycle again. Um, and I spent so long trying to find that mother figure, that father figure in the church. And I thought I found it. I actually thought I found it. I actually moved to California, to be with pastors who are like my parents. And I don't really want to hash all of that out right now, but having to walk away and seeing the abusive signs, the narcissistic signs and the abusive signs of what religion is doing and what religion is causing me, I completely have walked away. I walked away. I thought when I started deconstructing 5 years ago, I thought, okay, maybe there's a way that I could still have one foot in, one foot out. Like maybe there's a way around this. Maybe I could, I could still listen to the music, or I could still kind of read the word, or I can, and it wasn't working. And for 3 or 4 years, I was one foot in, one foot out. And then at my sister's funeral, um, after I saw how that was handled, I was done. I was like, this is it. I am no longer. I'm out. And I've completely walked away because I see how manipulative Christianity is, in my opinion. And in my experiences, I see how controlling and isolation they are and they can be, and I see how abusive they can be, and that's just not something that I want to be a part of anymore.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, you sought comfort in a place that you thought would be safe for you, which would be churches.
Hmm. It's what I knew. It was comfortable. It's what I knew, and I thought, okay, here we go again.
Hmm. And then, unfortunately, your trauma, your religious trauma, was compounded.
Hmm.
And then your sister passed away.
Hmm.
And when they handled the funeral, I'm guessing there were things that went down, but you don't have to tell us all of that. Just,
No.
but at her funeral, you recognized red flags.
I
And
absolutely recognized red flags, and it's let me make myself clear. It wasn't red flags with my foster family, but it was red flags with the message given that day. I will say that. In my humblest opinion, I feel like that message had no business being preached. It should have been kept on my sister, and to the 911 and police community. And instead, it was a message of repenting and turning back to God. And that's inappropriate, in my opinion. In my humblest opinion, that was a message that could have been saved for another time. That's why I've walked away, because when something so tragic as to losing my sister to suicide happened, as tragic as that was, for any pastor or elder to take that and twist it and use it for their gain, to gain more people in their church, or to cross one off their list of, yes, we won another one over to God, and you're going to use my sister's suffering for that. I have a problem with that. I have a problem. And that's when I was like, okay, we are done. And I can say that because, and I'm not proud of it, but I used to be that person. I used to be that Christian um that would try to go up to somebody and be like, oh well, God's allowing this to happen and just pray. And I used to be that person. I used to. I can say I'm thankfully not anymore. And that's why it irks me, because there shouldn't have been a message about salvation. There should have been a message about helping those with trauma and PTSD who ended up taking their life. That's what it should have been about. But anyway, that I'm going on a tangent at this point. But I don't. That's what's wrong, in my opinion, with Christianity, is they take something and they twist it, just like my essay. They twist it and say, well, that's not God. you're angry and you're bitter with God. And instead, you should be angry and bitter with people. I was told that today. And I said, oh, little do you know. And I think that's totally inappropriate. Um, I mean, yes, I'm angry. Absolutely. I want these three individuals held accountable. And I hold my aunt to the highest because she was my main caregiver.
And what if anger is the most normal response to injustice in the world?
Absolutely.
And when somebody dies by suicide, it's not pretty. It's really not pretty.
No,
And
absolutely not.
thank you for honoring us with that. One of our listeners, Robin, says, so very sad. I'm so sorry you went through all of that. I think that honestly, that's so much, in my opinion, that's so much more appropriate than pretending that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You don't take trauma and pretend that this is God.
No.
God's allowing this to happen
No.
because it's not the divine plan. It's not. You talk about people being angry. How many times did so many of us cry out to God
Mm-hmm.
as children?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what did he do?
Mhm. Nothing. Absolutely
How
nothing.
did he provide safety for us as children?
I, absolutely not.
I have questions.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I have comments, questions, concerns. Like, I remember being a certain age and I was a child and my aunt leading Al Aldridge right up to my bedroom, handed him a bottle of olive oil, handed him a Bible. She walked out, closed the door. She was on the phone with the leader of Praise, Power, and Prayer Temple in New Jersey. And while she was in her prayer closet praying in tongues with this lady on the phone, Al Aldridge was in my bedroom essaying me on top of me, rubbing olive oil on my body and casting demons. And I was crying. I was literally looking at my pink walls, crying. I was trying to get off of him. And nobody was around. Nobody. Nobody was there. I literally, and then I had to go to school the next day and face his children and be around people. Anybody that does not see anything wrong with what I just said, there is something wrong with you.
And the other thing is often there's this idea that if you don't fight back, you know,
Yeah,
you were
that,
asking for it.
or that I wanted it.
Uh, but then there's also the thing where people don't understand how, like, it can just be so traumatic. And not to delve into gory details, we don't want people to get too much information. But,
Right.
like, here's the thing when stuff like that goes down, and you are a child and you are literally being violated in the worst way,
Mm-hmm.
you respond with trauma responses. Sometimes you fight, sometimes you might think you might have gotten away, you might have been able to get overpower somebody for a second. But honestly, when it's an adult with a child, it's literally impossible. We need to stop putting it on children to protect themselves. And instead, we need to take actions to protect children.
Absolutely,
Like,
100%.
for
And
instance, like, let's stop pretending that trauma is a demon possession.
right,
Let's
can we
stop pretending that PTSD is a whatever spirit, a
right,
Jezebel spirit, a Python spirit. I heard that one the other day. anyways, like, let's stop pretending that PTSD is a spirit. Can we consider that maybe these are normal responses to the things that these children have experienced?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing that really gets me is my when I confronted my aunt about all this, she then has the balls to tell me, "Oh, I was a single parent. I was doing the best that I could." Really? That's the best you could do? You signed those adoption papers. You agreed to take care of me and protect me forever. That isn't just a until I'm 21 or until I'm 16 or until whenever you feel like you were done. I don't give a damn if you're a single parent or not. I don't care how many is in your household. It's your job to protect children. And if you're going to sit here and say, "Oh, the best that I could do because you were so out of control." I was out of control. So the best that you could do was SA me for 7 years.
I don't think that's quite enough.
It's time for the
It's
church at
not.
large to wake up.
It's time for people to wake up and to see what's happening. You
That's
can't
right.
call, you cannot justify essaying children. Furthermore, it is a community effort. It is a community effort. As Robin says, the world would be a different place if adults protected children. Here's the thing, like, you know, often there are adults that know or suspect that children are being abused and they do nothing.
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Absolutely. 100%.
And part of what I talk about is that we collectively, as in the 8 billion people in the world, we collectively have a responsibility to provide safe environments for the children. And we fail that. We fail that over and over and over. And why is it that we're failing it?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Was your aunt indoctrinated to believe this is the right thing? I mean, that is part of what happens. And
Yeah.
then the other part is often women who are in positions where they feel like they have some form of protection
Mm-hmm.
because of they're the enforcers.
Mm-hmm.
So they enforce those values. They enforce the silence.
Yeah.
And where has silence gotten us?
Nowhere. Nowhere. My favorite. So my aunt, she still tells the story. She still claims it that the Lord told her that I belonged to her. She was warned to not adopt me. She was very warned that that would go south. And look where it's turned out. Right. I was going somewhere. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, just the Lord told me part. Okay.
Yeah, because it was a holy mission. So the Lord told her. But did she have the tools and skills she needed to provide a safe environment for you?
Nope, absolutely not.
And then, when confronted, she said, if I remember correctly, she said that I did the best I could.
I was a single parent. You were so out of control, and I was doing what I needed to do. I thought I was dealing with a spiritual issue.
What does that even mean? You were so out of control. That mean you're having night terrors, you're having trouble sleeping, you're having
Right.
trouble in school. Like, what does that really mean? Or are you like
Right.
me and you wet your bed and you had like
Right.
massive depression where you couldn't get out of bed? Like, what does that actually mean?
What does that actually mean? Hold on, I'm turning on a light. Sorry about that.
That's
um,
okay.
Starting to get a little dark over here. Yeah, I don't. Her version of out of control. I was always having temper tantrums, or what looks like temper tantrums, and that's the thing. People, it's hard to decipher when somebody from the foster care system is having a temper tantrum or having a meltdown. And in my case, I was born with fetal alcohol syndrome, borderline mental retardation, plus on top of that, trauma from my birth mom. I was being sexually abused by my birth mom. Then in the foster care system, being abused by several different foster homes. Um, and then going to one where I was there for 3.5 years, didn't want to leave. My aunt literally ripped me out of there, literally took me out. She was warned to not do it. They told her, Cynthia, this is not going to be good. The reunification is not a good thing in this situation. Um, and my aunt's finding out the hard way, that this is what happens. And she still tries to play the victim of, oh, I did everything I knew to do. And I was a single parent. And yeah, I was out of control, but not in the way that she's trying to portray it. I was out of control in the terms of, yes, I tried to swerve the car off the road. Absolutely. Because I didn't want her hurting me. I wanted help. I wanted somebody to see it and be like, something's going on. And at this time I wasn't medicated. She didn't medicate me. She took me out of therapy. She put me in a religious private school. And so like there were things, and then you wonder why I was out of control. Like I was out
Well,
of control because you were you were abusing me. You're throwing me up against walls. You're having a pastor at the time come over to the house and sexually abuse me.
well, and I wouldn't even call it out of control. I
Right.
would say that you had untreated trauma
Absolutely.
because
Untreated trauma.
those are the consequences of untreated trauma
Hmm.
because trauma affects you massively, especially as a child.
Yeah.
And so like I think it really does a disservice to sit there and say, well, somebody's out of control. I mean, was it really out of control or was it the consequences of trauma,
Right.
untreated trauma? And how
Yes.
did you respond? And also, like, what are you doing again to like provide a semblance of safety? And there was no semblance of safety for you.
No.
But with that being said, like I know that today you have some different coping skills. Do you have anything you want to tell me about that?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned in the very beginning, I am also an intuitive trauma artist. So I do a lot of art. I do a lot of body mapping, which is just basically printing out like a diaphragm, printing out like a sheet of the diaphragm of a body, and drawing on that person or on that diaphragm, and just pinpointing where my pain is, because trauma is stored in the body. No matter what you say, it's always stored in the body. When it's not dealt with, it shows up, and so it's been showing up, and so I've been able to pinpoint that, and then I do some drawing. I do, and I use anything, you guys. Like it doesn't have to be paints. It could be a pencil with a piece of scrap paper. It could be, for my instance, if I'm in a classroom with children, I take out a piece of paper and some crayons, and the kids are like, hey, yes, let's color. Sure, let's do it. So it can be crayons and a $5, $2 Crayola sketch pad. For me, I've gone all over. I've done different things. I have an art journal as well. Actually, I'll kind of show it to you. Um, so here's just one. So I kind of did some art with that, and that's just with regular pens, um, like gel pens. Um, and then I did some other cool stuff, like this one. I know it's
Other
hard.
way,
Oh, there we go.
other way.
Hard to see.
There we go.
Yeah. So it's just that, and then I have different sketch pads of different sizes, just like this size that you can get at the craft store or buy online. So I did this one a while back.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and so I'm working on, and some of these I go back to because it's based on intuition, right? And so I have to ask myself when I go back to these, okay, am I ready? Like, am I willing to destroy the whole picture to create something different? This one was really cool. I did a technique actually that my life coach taught me, which was drawing something on the pad and then doing like a double. And so that's what I did.
Oh.
So it's kind of like you get two in one.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'll probably have to stand to show you my canvases because I don't think the camera is gonna um, be able to fit it in there, especially with the lighting that I have. So this one right here, I'll zoom in a little bit. So this one
Okay.
I'm working, yeah, this one I'm working on. I'm not sure if it's done yet. I feel like there's something else that needs to be added, but I'm not 100% sure. I have to sit with that for a little bit. And then this is the one that I'm working on currently. So this one, this one has a lot of, I like to call diarrhea green. And it's so funny. My life coach, she's like, oh no, anytime you say shit green or diarrhea green, I know you're really processing something. I'm like, yep. I mean, she's like, that means something's ready to come out, something's ready to be healed. And she's totally right. So anytime I have those colors, or that, that means there's just something's ready, something's coming up. And here's the thing, you guys. So I think a lot of people, because I used to paint like mountain views and flowers and different things like that. And intuition isn't necessarily about painting something pretty. It's not necessarily about painting a pretty picture. It's about relieving the pain. It's about, okay, I'm in pain. How can I release it? Um, because we all have coping skills, right? We all have something to cope with our trauma. Some are good, some are not. And it's just a way of releasing. It may not look pretty to somebody else, and that's okay. But for me, like my intuition was like, it needs red glitter. And that's what I put. I freaking red bomb glittered it. Like, and that's okay. Like, at the end of the day, this tells a painful story. There's a lot of red, and if you could look closer, you would see that there's a lot of red, there's a lot of orange, there's a lot of chains around the eyes. So there's just a lot there. um, it's beautiful in mine because I know what I'm creating in my story. Like, my artwork tells a story. I have a series that I'm working on, and it's literally all pink. I don't like the color pink. As I stated earlier, my bedroom was pink, and that's where I was abused. And so for me, painting pink on a canvas, that's rough. But it's necessary. It is necessary, and that's okay. Like, those pink walls are going to tell the story, and I'm going to tell that story on a canvas. And so that's what it's just listening to your inner voice. And that's something that, growing up in Praise, Power, and Prayer Temple in Windsor, Connecticut, like, you're not allowed to listen to intuition. You're not allowed to listen to your inner voice or your inner knowing. You're supposed to listen to God. You're supposed to read the word and what God and how God defines you. And for my belief system, I don't agree with that. There was a time in my life where I probably would agree with that, but I don't agree with that anymore. I listen to me. I listen to what my body needs. I listen to what my intuition is telling me. My intuition is saying, you need to rest. You need to rest. If you need to paint, you need to paint. Or maybe you need to read. Get a book and read. It's whatever your intuition is telling you. And that's what I do. I just listen to my intuition, and I let it heal, and I let it guide me. And I start listening to me.
Can I just say this? It almost sounds like you've found recovery in working through the unspeakable things and the unimaginable things and the indescribable things that you've experienced in life by creating abstract art and by honoring your needs, your intuition, your what you
Mm,
know can be helpful for you in this moment. That's what it sounds like to me.
absolutely.
You found a way to process the emotions that are unspeakable. That takes a lot of strength.
Yep. And
And
that's the message I try to communicate is this isn't about painting something that's going to make me happy. And I try to drive that message home because I have so many friends that don't understand intuition. And intuition isn't necessarily about painting something that's happy. I have a friend who literally wants me painting happy things all the time. And that is not reality. That's not my reality. I find beauty in the ugliness of what I'm making, whatever that is. Um, and these are my artwork will be in my book. I am in the middle of writing a book, and these pieces are going to be in my book.
that's amazing. So, how are you honoring your experience? Because it sounds to me like you're honoring it by writing a book, creating things, honoring yourself and your needs
Mhm.
as far as like, especially managing the trauma that you live with. Are there any other ways?
Yeah, I mean, so um, I I honor myself by just living because at one point I was actually diagnosed like literal paperwork notes from special education teachers and doctors saying that I would never live on my own. I would never have a job. I would never be able to do anything. I'd be in a group home. Okay. Well, first of all, I would love for them to be sitting next to me because they were wrong. The state of Maine and the state of Connecticut were wrong. I am honoring myself by living. I have two jobs. I have a full time and a part time. I am paying my own rent. I am paying my own bills. I am cooking. I am doing all the things that I was told I would never be able to do. And I'm saying F you. And I'm doing it. I am honoring myself by honoring my sister. Like, I have moved across the country 6 times. And that's something that not everybody gets to do, especially in my circumstances. That's not something that you get to do, or that you have the privilege of doing. And I don't have a car and I don't drive, and so I've moved across the country 6 times. I That's been a privilege, something that I worked for. It wasn't. It kind of just fell in my lap, and I said, "Okay, I'll go, sure." And that's why I'm able to just pick up every 3 or 4 years and say, "Okay, let's try this place," because what do I have to lose, right? Like and so yeah, in just honoring myself and honoring my sister by writing this book and getting our story out. Like, that is how I'm doing it.
Good for you. I'm glad you're able to do that. And then I'd like to ask you, because I'm about to end this live stream, but I'd like to ask you before we go, if there's anybody who's experiencing some of the things that you've experienced, what would you say to them?
Um Number one, you're not alone, and reach out. Reach out. If you're able to reach out, reach out.
I would agree with that. Thank you for that because you are not alone. Even if it feels like it, you're
Mhm.
not alone. There are
Yes.
8 billion
What
people
you
in the
got to do.
world.
If you don't have access to a phone, if you don't have access to a phone, you don't have access to email or internet. Um, Use your feet and your legs. Do what you got to do to run and get help or to get out. Do what you have to do safely,
As safely as possible.
safely as possible.
And you know what? If you are in any of these situations that Heather has talked about, I want you to know that you deserve better than that. You are worthy.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Heather,
Of
because
course.
you also are worthy. We are all worthy. We deserved safety as children. And you know what? So do our future generations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And have we even begun to combat abuse? If we haven't done it collectively, have
Yeah.
we?
No.
I've been asking myself that question because I think ultimately one of the things that we have to really consider is that when people reach out, sometimes we are given lemons. And when I say lemons, I'm saying things that there are no words to describe adequately what we experienced. And when we speak out, it's not because necessarily are we bitter, or are we trying to prevent that from happening to other people and children?
Right.
Are
Yeah.
we bitter or unforgiving, or are we raising awareness?
Raising
Are we
awareness.
are we making sure that people know that this happens? Because I think when we consider and we approach life with the mentality that it is a collective responsibility of society at large to provide safety to children.
Mhm.
When people start taking responsibility for that, when people start recognizing that it is all of us that create the environments in which children are raised, if we see something, we should be doing something.
Absolutely. 100%.
And always, always remember you are enough. Thank you again so much. I'm really, really honored that you did come and talk. Thank you. Thank you to all our viewers and listeners. And as always, you can like, comment, share, subscribe. Thank you to our Patreon subscribers for bringing us this podcast. And as always, art used by BJK. And until the next time, live your best life. Be curious, enjoy